My Upaguru, Aurobindo Basu, used to address everyone in the same way. Dear children of the Mother. And so I do the same. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about music and how I became interested in music and how music has changed my life completely, because it was Mother who asked me to bring down a new music, which you have heard tonight. So to begin my story, I was a little boy, and my father was a member of the Roman Catholic Church, and my mother was a member of the Russian Orthodox Church. So my little brother was dying. All the blood was drying up in his veins. And my father went to the Roman Catholic priest, and the priest didn't say anything. He just said, "Give me money." My father walked out, never came back again, joined my mother's church, and so I had to be baptized a second time. First as a Catholic, then as a Russian Orthodox. But in a way, that was perhaps the greatest blessing that I could have been given by the Mother, because I was in my mid-teens, maybe 14 or 15, when my father joined this small Russian Orthodox church in New York State, in Spring Valley, actually. And so many things happened from that conjunction that it's almost hard to believe. One of the first things that happened was that it turned out that I had a very big and deep voice. In Russian, it's called basso profundo. And that is very highly valued in the church. We had a small choir loft, and I began to sing with this choir. And I sang all the great composers of Russia. And it opened me up to a music of such beauty, of such depth, and often of such sadness, that you would have to hear it to get a feeling of the depth of the Russian soul. Our mother spoke very highly of the Russian soul. She said it was very occult. But I think what united me with them was the great composers from the early 1600s, I would say, until the 2000s, when we even have today Russian sacred choral composers. A few of them have died recently, others are still composing. And, during the period of the Cold War, or we can say the Communist Party rule, composers had to write this music in secret. It could not be shown to anyone else, or they would be killed or rushed off to some gulag. So people like Golovanov, who wrote the most heart-touching music, wrote it very, very quietly. And only in the 20th century and now in the 21st century is his music beginning to be sung. It was never sung before. You couldn't sing anything sacred in communist Russia. So I sang with him, and then I began to sing with many other choirs. And downstairs, below the choir loft, the people would go, and there was a pedestal with an icon of the Virgin Mary. And for some reason, which I didn't know then, I would bow down and kiss that icon. Only much later did I know it was Mother. Well, in that same little town of Spring Valley, there was a farm that was based on Rudolf Steiner's philosophy. And I used to go to that farm and visit the people there. They were so extraordinary. They had all of these techniques of planting, and things were growing as I've never seen before. And this man walks up to me and he says, I'm Dr. Koch, and greetings. Why don't you come into my laboratory? I'm a teenage kid, and he's treating me like an adult. And I go into his laboratory, and he takes an apple, and he takes a slice off the apple, and then puts it under a microscope. He says, have a look. So I look, and it's all these concentric circles, all different colors, very beautiful colors. Then he takes another apple, puts it under the microscope, and I see these colors radiating like that, radiating out. He said, that's an organic apple. The other one was a chemically grown apple. And that was my first introduction to organic gardening. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of my book, The Descent of a New Music, so I can tell you a little bit. Music came to me early in the simple songs my father played on guitar and accordion, and the ballads my mother listened to every day. Though often sweet and often sentimental, none of this music touched me. An opening began when, as a child, I would listen to my mother's family sing praises to the Lord before each meal. My mother had 7 siblings, 4 girls, 4 boys, and each of them were a different voice. So it was a choir, and it was extraordinary. I would stand there as a little guy, and I would listen to these beautiful hymns sung in praise and offering to the divine before each meal. How many of us do that? So this Russian Orthodox tradition allowed only voices, no instruments. And they did not allow any statues in the churches, only icons. And you've seen the beauty of Russian icons, I'm sure. Now, in this large family, as the children grew up, we would go to church together. But on the way to church, each one of the children had to be an instrument. I like to be the trumpet at times, so I was the trumpet, and another one would be another instrument, and the whole car would be filled with this joyous sound of music. Not sacred music, just any music. And so I began to grow up in a small town in Old Japan. Japan is very well known for its history of George Washington and the English battles. And it was a beautiful area, very quiet, filled with marvelous trees, and you could walk for miles and no one would ever disturb you. Very, very few people were there. An interesting difference to where I live today. So, to go on, I left the church because first I started to study Steiner, and then I had my first of 15 surgeries, and my aunt and uncle invited me to California, and I took a bus out there. And on the way back, I had a lot of girlfriends, but one night, an Indian man got on the bus, and he told me his name was Pandit Bekpati Sinha. I asked him, "May I sit with you?" Of course, I asked him question after question, and he answered everything. And I studied with him for 2 years, Raja Yoga. And one day he comes to me and he says, "Would you like to continue your musical studies? I can get you a scholarship to Shantiniketan. Everything will be paid. All you have to pay is your passage there and back." How could I refuse that? To Gore's University. My gosh. So I said yes. And he said, "You have to earn some money to pay your passage." So I started working 2 jobs. But prior to that, I had been, it seems that people wanted me to study with a great teacher. She was a German teacher. Her name was Rosalie Miller, and she was famous for training the great singers of the Metropolitan Opera. And I got to study with her. And she would give me free lessons at times, but she would always warn me now. She said, "Don't go to India, because if you go to India, everything will be ruined." The great Yehudi Menuhin studied in the West, and when he came to India, she said, ruined him. I'm not too sure about that. But anyway, I was studying in Hunter College and giving solo performances. I had a pianist who was my accompanist who lived in a little flat with me, a very beautiful flat. And so then I went back to New Jersey, my father's home, started working for him, worked in a machine shop, earned enough money to get my passage there and back. So I followed Pandit Sinha out to California. And strangely enough, well, maybe not so strange these days, he fell in with some very wealthy ladies in Riverside, California. And he was gone for weeks, and my money was dwindling. And then one day he comes to me and he says, "Everything has fallen through. If you truly want to do yoga, you go back to your parents' home and practice samatha." Something in my soul must have been so strong, because I looked in his eyes and I said, "No, I am going to India." The next day, I meet Jyoti Priya, Dr. Judith Tyberg, who formed the first Sri Aurobindo Center in America. It was called the East-West Center, East-West Cultural Center. And she says to me, "But you are meant to go and see Mother." I hadn't heard of Mother until that time. I heard Sri Aurobindo's name once. I think I've told a few of that story, where I was with Pandit Sinha and his Swedish wife and the two little children and this group of disciples around him. And someone mentioned Sri Aurobindo and said, "Oh yes, that's the fellow who writes 10 words when he could have written 1. That's the only thing I heard of Sri Aurobindo. So I found a ship. I thought this would be easy. I was going to see Mother, no problems at all. So I get on the ship, and there are only 4 people on the ship. It's a cargo ship, and it's filled with redwood timbers, each one that big around and 200 feet long. Now, there's a Japanese couple, and a rich American guy, and me. That's the only 4 rooms that we had. I said, "Oh, welcome." So we start San Francisco, going up into Alaska to go around. And suddenly in Alaska, a typhoon hits us. And I'm watching these timbers snap off the ship like toothpicks. The whole ship was cleared. The captain calls me up to his quarters, and he says, "1 more degree, and we capsize." I said, "We can't capsize. I'm going to see Mother." And we didn't. And I got to see her. So that's basically the preface of this book and my journey of the new music. So I'll read you a little of the introduction. I have an intimation that the new music may be visual as well as oral. It remains unknown to man before the descent of the supramental brought down by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. I hear tone clusters of an infinite love filling the vortices of space, descending in a supreme harmony, a music of the higher spheres, enriched by the aspiration of the earth. On the wings of these choral prayers, there rides a voice of such haunting beauty that no heart will remain unmoved, no soul fail to leap up at the call of its pristine melody, no mind left uninspired. Even the body will vibrate to these chords of the divine musician. I have heard the music of the spheres just once, and nothing on earth has ever come close to it again. And I'm praying that one day, through the Om choir, it will happen. And I feel tonight, especially the last Om, it almost happened. But there was a great descent that came down. Did anyone feel it? Did anyone feel? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very, very good. I went to the chamber last week, and I began to hear the music. It was 2 tones, one a very, very high tone, and the other a lower tone. And I asked my friend Shadalu, "Can you tell me about them?" And he said, "Was the lower tone an Om?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you're hearing something from the highest spheres that we usually don't hear. So, well, in the new music, we will experience the mantric force that calls into manifestation the supernal bliss, the grace ever present in our lives that rarely we feel and seldom acknowledge. The music of the future has begun, and one can catch its subtle notes in those subtle realms where silence reigns. But its plenitude awaits our receptivity to the divine behest. It is a music of force and majesty, scored with divine humility. The Mother brought down the first tremendous notes into the rhythmic pulse of Earth's awakening, and gave to Sunil Bhattacharya the open movements of its massive themes. Those shall come who will complete the full orchestration of the music of the new creation. Singers of the ultimate songs of praise, musicians of a higher order, composers of canticles of light and peace, ennobling man, enriching life, enhancing joy. So I come to Pondicherry. 10 rupees to my name, pair of broken chappals, one shirt, one pair of pants a little torn. And I come on the 23rd of November, 1961. I just passed my 60th birthday of meeting Mother on November 24th, 1961. Very shortly after darshan, Mother calls me. And, I don't know anything about the ashram. I walk up these stairs. I enter this room. And Mother is sitting there in a beautifully carved chair. And no one is in the room. No Champaklal, no one else. And Mother says to me, in Finnish, "Good day." And I bow down and I put my head on her feet. And 1 hour later, I hardly know what has happened. She talks to me. She tells me about the great composers and what they brought down. She speaks once of César Franck and said his music is very, very high. She spoke about Chopin, and she said Chopin's music is the music that is heard most often on the inner planes. But then she said, I don't know why. Why it should be so, I guess. So, she becomes very quiet, and she says, "You must bring down a new music." I'm 23 years old. And I say to Mother, "Mother, I don't know anything about combining words and music, because all my background until then was singing songs in 7 languages by the great poets whose poems the composers took and set to music. So it was that union, we called it in those days, lieder, or art song. And I didn't know anything about this. Mother says, no, you must go far above words and bring down the pure music." Well, I've told you about my meditation with Mother, so I won't go into that today. But Mother says at one point, "Is the music with you now?" And I say, "Yes, Mother, it's always with me." Mother says, "Not always." And she took it away for a while so that she could work on other aspects of my being. Now, in the silence of the soul, I listen for the new music's descent. In the choirs of the world, I hear the sounds, a single note supported by symphonies of light, a swelling diapason of orchestral might, a lone and perfect voice singing of a golden age, a choir of 1,000 voices in collective harmony, the song of life divine, captured in immortal strophes, the voice of the eternal bard, the singer supreme, the Lord and Master of our lives. Since Mother gave me that Adesh, the first one that she gave me, I started working with different groups of people. There was a big French contingent in Aspiration, and I worked, and I did a composition of one of the French fellows who composed a very nice piece. And I had about 50 singers, and I trained all of them, and that was very nice. And then Shravan and a few other people would gather around, and maybe 4 or 5 of us would sing in the old Bharat Nivas. And the sound was extraordinary there. Of course, they tore it all down and built something beautiful, but it was a special time. And I've got only 5 minutes left. I've talked so long. Okay, let me quote some things for you. Music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music. Sergei Rachmaninoff. Aaron Copland. The whole problem can be stated quite simply by asking, is there a meaning to music? My answer would be yes. And can you state in so many words what the meaning is? My answer would be no. So, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Music is the universal language of mankind. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Music whispers to us dim secrets that startle our wonder as to who we are and for what, whence, and where to. So in this book, I quote a lot of Savitri because there is so much music in Savitri. In fact, Savitri is almost all music. It's mantra, it's rhythm, and it's the divine music. So you can see page after page where I have quoted from Savitri. Mother writes, and this will be almost my last one, to hear behind the sound is to come into contact with the subtle reality that is behind the material fact, behind the word or the physical mind, or behind music. For example, one concentrates, and then one hears what is behind. It means coming into contact with the vital reality that is behind the appearances. Mother has so much to say about music, and I'll end with a song, a poem that I wrote in 2005. It's called Music of the purified heart. 1,000 lyrics cry out for the song that lies unsung upon the lips of man, melodies of soul for which we long, and poetry unheard since time began. An impress of divinity we feel, and sometimes glimpse in rare refracted light a splendor that on the spirit seems to steal and lift the opaque curtain of the night. Greed still holds the world and us in thrall. Desire captivates our hearts and more, often leads the spirit to its fall, and the progress of the body we ignore. The intimate supreme felicity who sits within and still cannot be found eludes us by his sheer proximity, till silence reigns on consecrated ground. But now the moment comes, the voice is heard, that counsels us to find the secret cave, the sacred Om, first and final word, where dwells the light the unborn spirit gave, shedding ego's hard and brilliant mask, conscious, walk again the upward way, resume the inward quest, the age-old task, transforming life, man's debt to God repay. Namaste. Namaste. Such an honor to be with you. Such a joy to be in the company of dedicated souls and devoted souls and friends of so many years.